I am joined now by Nicole Shanahan. She is, of course, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s vice presidential pick, as well as an entrepreneur herself. Nicole Shanahan, thanks so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me. Excited to
So,
be here.
of course. So perhaps I just want to start out here. I've interviewed RFK before as well, and I know we were talking a little bit before we started recording our interview here. I asked him about you in that interview, and a lot of, I guess, the curiosity is he had many number of people that he could have potentially picked. Tulsi Gabbard was someone who was being floated around. Aaron Rodgers, of course, very popular in the sports community. Why do you think he ultimately went with you, and what is it that you bring to the ticket that will ultimately make his overall candidacy stronger?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, lots of great candidates. I have been supporting his campaign since he was running in the Democratic primary last year. And anyone he would have picked, I would be as equally enthusiastic. I think he brings together a group of people who are really committed to the issues. And I was very grateful to be given the offer. I think I bring a full package. I bring deep knowledge in tech. I bring great experience in entrepreneurship. Um, I understand the American dream pretty darn well, having grown up I personally overcame poverty. I um, very much desire to become a lawyer here in the United States because I'm a great lover of the American legal system. And I'm a mother to a child with special needs who's impacted by the chronic disease epidemic. More than half of American children are impacted by this epidemic. And I will dedicate likely the rest of my life to fighting on behalf of children and their right to be healthy and their right to thrive. I'm also a very vocal advocate for women's health. I'm the largest funder in scientific research into the foundational science around women's reproduction and fertility. And I don't intend to monetize any of our discoveries. I intend to empower women to be fully informed about their health and choices and options. And so I believe that taken in sum, also I'm able to contribute to the campaign directly. There's campaign finance laws that allow candidates themselves to self-finance in an unlimited amount. And when you take that together with the fact that I can't be bought, I'm not a corrupt politician. I'm a mom. I'm a fierce mom. And I've seen the corruption in this country eat away at the very soul of childhood. And there is nothing in me that could ever take my eye off of the mission to course correct that issue.
And I want to pick up on something you mentioned because you mentioned yourself being able to help fund this campaign. That was obviously a lot of people talking about, when you were actually selected as his choice for vice president, being able to help in some of the fundraising efforts. But how much does it perhaps place, a burden or an additional, thing that you'll have to fight for in terms of name recognition? Whereas someone like, again, Aaron Rodgers has a very high level of name recognition. Have you experienced any difficulty in terms of getting your name out there, sharing the brand with people to really kind of, again, share that message that RFK and yourself are looking to spread?
I think that there's name recognition and then there's the recognition of somebody who's out there for the right reason. And I think that most people, if they just give me 5 minutes of time, listen to what I have to say, um, overlook some of the immense sexism that's out there in legacy media. Um, our Democratic Party here in the United States has shown an incredible lack of restraint in criticizing my background and credentials. And if you actually look at my credentials, I'm an attorney, I'm in tech. I built a company, one of the earliest AI companies to build large language models. I sold that company very successfully. I'm affiliated with Stanford's Law and Computer Science department and built a whole legal technologist movement as one of the original founders. I have incredible credentials to do the job. And, if they are saying I'm disqualified because I'm a young woman, I mean, that's just blatantly ageist and sexist. And you're a great example that young people with courage are capable of doing anything. So, I think that if you give me 5 minutes, you hear about my story, what brought me to this campaign, what keeps me here day after day against such incredible odds and such incredible cruelty. It's because there is a big fight before us to correct some of the evils that have stripped away our greatest, most precious freedom, and that is the freedom of the family to live with a full, healthy life and full, healthy liberty.
You mentioned the Democratic Party, and I mean, this is something interesting. Like Chris Cuomo, for example, he's someone who's been a very strong mentor to me, and he always talks about like the game, so to speak, in American politics, the fact that it's very binary between Democrats and between Republicans. And that's kind of the piece that I want to ask you about here, because obviously RFK started out his campaign trying to mount a primary challenge to President Biden, which obviously did not go as successfully, just given the nature of how hard it is to, again, challenge someone like an incumbent president. But even running as an independent candidate poses a bunch of challenges as it relates to things like ballot access. I know just today, the We the People Party, which is how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running, was, I think, granted ballot access in Mississippi. So I guess you are making some progress, but how quickly and how realistic is it to say that you and RFK are going to be able to paint a pathway to victory, again, just given the nature of some of these challenges with ballot access?
Ballot access is one thing that it can be overcome if you have a candidate like Bobby Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And we are on 22. We've qualified for 22 ballots. We've now secured more electoral vote representations that get us well over 270 electoral votes. And so that's actually the easier part of this is qualifying for ballot access. We have a path for that. We've had a path for that for months, and we are ahead of schedule. The thing that is harder to overcome is the depths of the corruption of the DNC. They are suing us with frivolous lawsuits in almost each one of these states. It's one after another. I think they've now sued us in seven or eight states. I can actually, if you want, I have the updated every day. It's an updated number. But yeah, it's about, let's see. Here we go. 1, 2, 6 states. That's the updated official number. They've sued us 6 times to try to prevent us from getting on the ballot. And I've read the New York case. It is one of the most frivolous lawsuits lacking any merit or credibility I've ever seen, and they're getting away with it. We will fight them. We will fight each and every challenge. But I want the American people to take note that there is certainly one group of political allegiance, and that is to the Democratic Party that hates democracy in this country.
It's interesting you bring up that point because, like, for example, in some of the polls, it has shown that RFK actually takes more support away from someone like Donald Trump than from someone like Joe Biden, and yet it seems as if the DNC is more threatened by RFK's candidacy than the Republicans are themselves. Do you see a world in which perhaps RFK ends up taking more support away from, one candidate over the other? Or I guess a lot of his campaign seems to kind of be built in encouraging new people who perhaps otherwise wouldn't be voting to actually come out and hit the ballot box?
They believe in 2020, the campaign slogan, not Trump, was enough to elect Biden. And they thought that if they just threw themselves at fully taking down Trump, right? If they could just convince enough people to vote against Trump, that they would be successful in the 2024 election this year. And in fact, it's unlikely that even if we withdrew, they would have any success in using that as their sole motivation to ring in voters on election day. And my greatest concern right now with their behavior is that they're willing to throw away democracy, giving a good candidate and a good ticket, an option to be on the ballot, to offer a third choice to a country who's been asking for a third choice. It was very, very clear as early as last year that Biden and Trump were polling at historic lows going into the primaries. And they disregarded these numbers. They do not listen to the American public. And that is why they're in the position they are in today. That is why they're going to lose this election, not because we're running. It's because exclusively due to their own failures.
And do you think the messaging, like it's now, the Democratic Party now has a whole communications team that is driven at taking down third-party candidates, which is basically the only, at this point, I mean, there's Jill Stein and a libertarian candidate as well, but it's kind of a roundabout way of saying a communications team driven to try to take down RFK Jr. And it seems as if they really are just going after his seriousness as a candidate as opposed to going after him on some of the actual issues that are at stake in this campaign. So I guess how do you kind of redirect those attacks and actually focus on some of these issues? I think, just from talking to people who are my age even in the United States, they're kind of tired of having, Trump and Biden going at it at one another, just talking about, for example, the legal issues that Trump is facing. They would much rather see candidates talk about, for example, the cost of living, the cost of gasoline. I mean, some of these issues that, yeah, are really important to people. So how do you kind of, again, recenter those arguments?
Well, the problem is both of these candidates can't talk about these issues because they're responsible for them. If they talk about them, God forbid, they might actually have to say, we made mistakes during our administration. We have added to the national deficit. We have driven up inflation so that young people virtually have no chance of affording a home in this country. They can't talk to the issues. They are incapable of talking to the issues because both candidates have been completely bought out by special interests, whether it's big tech or big ag or big pharma. Both candidates are nothing more than a shell for the corporate capture of this country. And that is why they are fully incapable of speaking to the issues, because they are more than likely to offend one of their donors. We have an opportunity right now to run as a largely self-financed ticket that has not taken any big pharma or big tech dollars. We have no special interests. We are truly independent in every way. You can think a candidate should and ought to be independent. If that candidate's job is to represent the best interests of the American people.
All right, we will leave our conversation there. Nicole Shanahan, thank you so much.